The markets are closed, but the business stories are just heating up. Hello, I'm Mai Rodriguez. Catch up with us on Business Blue. Asian shares mostly rise on Tuesday after U.S. President Donald Trump delays raising tariffs on China for another 90 days. Trump announced the extension of the tariff suspension on Truth Social. South Korea's Kospi is currently flat with a downward bias, while Singapore's Straits Times is in the red and the rest are in the green. In the currency markets, the U.S. dollar depreciates against the Japanese yen, but it depreciates against the Singapore dollar, the South Korean won, and the Thai baht. And it's flat against the Hong Kong dollar. The Australian dollar, meanwhile, appreciates against the greenback. In commodities, gold prices are flat with a downward bias, while oil prices are mixed. In the cryptocurrency space, Bitcoin falls by 0.2%, while Ethereum adds over 1%. More on the tariff suspension between the U.S. and China. President Trump said all other terms of the tariff agreement remain unchanged. The announcement came just hours before a deadline when U.S. tariffs on Chinese goods were set to rise to 64% from 30%. It's still unclear what rates China would have imposed on American goods, which currently face a minimum of 10%. President Trump will not impose tariffs on gold. This and speculation about its role in the trade dispute. The U.S. Customs and Border Protection had earlier suggested possible tariffs on gold bars, raising concerns about supply chain disruptions. A White House official said an executive order is being prepared to clear up confusion about tariffs on gold and other specialty products. Senate President Cheese Escudero shrugs off what he calls a demolition job aimed at ousting him from the Senate leadership. In a press conference this morning, Escudero denied any involvement in the awarding of over 5.4 billion pesos in flood control contracts to Center Race Construction, whose owner, he admits, is a kababayan and former campaign donor. He labeled an online article implicating him as malicious and hinted that a House official is behind the alleged plot to unseat him to clear the way for a possible VP impeachment by February 2026. Still, Escudero says he's confident in the support of the majority of senators to retain his post.
Tila nagkakatotoo na yung sinabi ko nitong mga nagdaang linggo na mayroong demolition PR job na nakatuon laban sa akin. At tulad ng babala na isang kapwa ko senador, na ito'y gagawin upang tiyakin na maalis ako sa pwesto at nang pag-final muli daw yung impeachment, ay wala na ako dito pagdating ng February 6.
Bulacan Vice Governor Alex Castro clarifies the provincial government does not have funds for flood control projects. He says these are planned and managed at the national level by the Department of Public Works and Highways. His statement follows President Marcos's disclosure that Bulacan has the highest number of flood control projects in the country, 668 in total. On BNC's at the forefront, Castro said residents have been asking about these projects, but he has no first-hand information on them.
Ang alam lang namin is yung mga provincial infrastructure projects na kami mismo yung nag-i-implement. So, meron akong nakitang gano'n na saan nyo dinala to, Governor Daniel and Vice Gov Alex. And kung gusto ko lang linawin sa kanila na yung mga flood, wala po akong pondo ng flood control project bilang Vice Governor. Si Governor Daniel ay wala ring flood control project. At kung aasahan yung provincial government po na pondo, ay hindi, yung wala po kaming naka-allocate na talagang para sa, katulad nung pinag-uusapan ngayon, dahil ito po ay DPWH at national project po ito. So hindi po ito galing sa amin.
Looking ahead, Castro recommended greater involvement from local governments in the implementation and monitoring of flood control projects, saying this would help improve accountability, ensure resources are well used, and boost public trust. The issue highlights a wider national debate on how flood management or how flood management funds are allocated and who should oversee them. The Philippine Chamber of Commerce and Industry is backing the idea to turn over flood control projects to the private sector. It says putting them under public-private partnerships could save money and deliver faster, more efficient results. On BNC's Business 360, PCCI Vice President for Trade Brian Ang warned that billions have been spent on flood projects with little impact. He cites corruption and questionable bidding as key issues. He pointed to successful private sector-led projects as proof that PPPs can offer better transparency and accountability.
I looked at the success of the new NAIA terminal and the success of, let's say, the Skyway 3 interconnector. And I realized that infrastructure projects that are given to the private sector generally are more successful, efficient, and cheaper than if you give it to the bureaucracy of the national government.
Ang added that such reforms could improve the country's image to foreign investors, especially ahead of the Philippines' hosting of the ASEAN Leaders Summit next year. The Philippine Chamber of Commerce and Industry warns that the new 19% US tariff on Philippine exports wipes out any competitive edge matching rates imposed on other ASEAN nations. PCCI's Brian Ang also says the bigger threat is a proposed 100% US tariff on semiconductor imports, which, if finalized, could cripple one of the country's top export earners. He then urged the government to negotiate exemptions similar to those granted to other countries.
They are extremely devastated with this semiconductor tariff. What is hopeful is that Trump has given exceptions. Taiwan Semiconductor Manufacturing Corporation and NVIDIA have been exempted from this chip tariff. So I hope our economic team can use this as probably a bargaining chip to negotiate with Washington further. We are as much an ally of the US as Taiwan is.
Ang also called for a revamp of the country's export model to rebuild global competitiveness. Consumers need to tighten their belts as Meralco will hike rates this August by 63 centavos per kilowatt hour. This is due to higher generation and transmission charges. This could result in electricity bills increasing by up to 125 pesos for every 200 kilowatt hours used and a 313 peso increase for every 500 kilowatt hours used. We're taking a short break. More business stories coming up next. You're watching Business Brief. You're back on Business Brief. Berong Nickel Corporation, a subsidiary of DMCI Mining, has signed a mineral projection sharing agreement with the Environment Department. In a disclosure, DMCI said the deal coursed through the Mines and Geosciences Bureau, covers its Long Point property in Aborlan, Palawan, spanning about 2,177 hectares. The agreement grants BNC the exclusive rights to explore, develop, and utilize mineral resources in the area under the Philippine Mining Act of 1995. It has an initial 25-year term, renewable for another 25 years, and takes effect upon registration with the MGB. SM Prime Holdings Incorporated is allocating 7 billion pesos to redevelop SM Mega Mall. In a disclosure, the company said the revamp of one of the country's most iconic malls is slated for completion between 2027 and 2029. SM Prime explained the project aims to enhance the customer experience while integrating long-term sustainability features throughout the property. The mall will adopt a crystal Crystal Islands concept, emphasizing natural light, open flow, and organic forms. It is designed by UK-based architectural firm Benoy, known for developments like the Jewel Changi in Singapore and Icon Siam in Thailand. First-gen corporations' attributable recurring net income barely moved in the first half of 2025. In a disclosure, the Lopez Group's clean and renewable energy provider said net income rose slightly to 8.6 billion pesos from 8.4 billion in the same period last year. The company explained that the Energy Development Corporation's geothermal portfolio posted lower recurring net income in the first 2 quarters due to reduced revenues from lower spot market prices and higher finance charges. These charges were linked to new debt incurred to fund the EDC's extensive drilling program and growth projects. The demand for Vietnamese bananas in Japan is increasing. Data from Japanese trade statistics show exports of Vietnamese bananas to Tokyo more than doubled in July 2025 compared to the same period the previous year. Vietnam is becoming a threat to the dominance of Philippine bananas, whose market share fell to about 75% last year from 90% in early 2010. Vietnam now ranks third in banana shipment volume to Japan, behind the Philippines and Ecuador. To take another short break, a look at how Philippine stocks did today, coming up next. You're watching Business Brief. You're back on Business Brief. Hundreds of cabin crew members of Air Canada picket at major Canadian airports. This as negotiations for compensation are ongoing. Most airlines have paid crew members only when planes are in motion. But in the latest negotiations, flight attendants want compensation for tasks like boarding passengers and waiting around the airport before and between flights. Air Canada said in a statement it remains at the bargaining table.
Absolutely. So we're here in a silent demonstration to signify the fact that we don't need to speak because our union is doing a clear job speaking clearly and concisely about what demands we have at the table for us to be able to ratify a tentative agreement.
Sportswear maker Adidas and Mexican-American designer Willy Chavarria apologized to the Mexican indigenous community. This after a Mexican state accused them of cultural appropriation over the design of a new shoe. The Oaxaca slip-on of Adidas features a woven leather surface, open heel, and thick rubber sole. Officials in the Mexican state of Oaxaca accuse Adidas of copying the huarache, a handmade sandal of the community. Tesla opens its second showroom in New Delhi, a move signaling confidence in one of the world's fastest-growing markets. The launch comes amid tariff tensions between the U.S. and India, but also highlights the strong demand for electric vehicles in Asia's largest economy. While some consumers are joining calls to boycott American products, others see Tesla as a symbol of innovation and a step towards a cleaner future. India's rising middle class and push for green transport make it a critical battleground for global automakers. Philippine shares snap its 3-day losing streak after closing in the green today. The PSE index ended higher by more than 0.5% to close at 62.89, finishing the day as the fourth best performer in Asia. Among the sectoral indices, only financials ended in the red, with holding firms rising the most at over 1%. Advancers outpaced decliners 105 to 84. Total value turnover reached 13.7 billion pesos. The day's most active stocks ended mixed, with JG Summit rising the most at nearly 7%. DigiPlus fell the most at more than 5%. Meanwhile, the foreign exchange market, the peso, is currently trading at 57.18 against the greenback, depreciating from the previous close of 57.04. That's the wrap for today's Business Brief. I'm Mai Rodriguez. Join us again tomorrow as we bring you the stories that help you plan your next big, bold moves in business. Only here on the Bilyonaryo News Channel. See you then.